So, what would it mean if you dream about exposure of private areas? Well, I mean, if you think about the feeling of being in public and being exposed, it's often about embarrassment and shame. And dreams that talk about where that is the feeling, because you can have other dreams where you feel you're exposed, but you don't feel any shame at all, and that is often about doing with transparent. But these dreams aren't about that actually. It's about not being aware of being exposed. So in that sense, it's to do with something you don't want to be seen being seen, and it being a source of it's a worry about that being an embarrassment or a shame. What is being exposed will give you maybe a clue into what that talks about, and also the context. A business presentation is very different from a church service, for instance. Might also tell you what the context for this is. And the other thing to think about is just the point of view. Sometimes we're the ones who are exposed, and other times we're helping someone who's exposed, and that will also help to tell you, help you to zone in on what's going on here.
So now that you say talk about others being exposed, let's talk about this dream. I've also dreamt that a woman's breasts, abdomen, and underpants were exposed to me during a church service. She had a woman with her who was helping her as she was unsteady on her feet. This woman covered the exposed woman back up by pulling her dress into place. It had become caught up when we all stood to sing. So that's a very interesting dream about exposure of private areas. I'd love it if you could just cover that, what you think it means.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to do with, well, it's interesting, isn't it, that it's, this exposure happens when a woman who's already unsteady on her feet, which is talking about an inability to kind of to stand and to stand up. So it may be that she is under some kind of difficulty. She's dealing with trouble in her life in some form because she's struggling to stand. So she's feeling oppressed by something, but she wants to stand to sing, which is part of the worship. So worship can be actual worship, but it can also be when you one of the words for worship is to be guided by the North Star. So it's when you're talking about, singing about God's direction in your life and where your life is going, where you feel God is leading you. This might be to do with when she starts to do that, there's this exposure, and the dreamer is seeing her, basically her reproductive organs, it seems like, her ability to nurture, which is kind of her breasts, and her abdomen and her underpants. So it's not a complete nudity, and she has a covering, but she would be embarrassed for this to be seen. And she has a woman who's helping her, who actually, does she say that? She does, doesn't she? By pulling the dress back into place. So she pulls the covering back over herself. So she said something which is embarrassing, it reveals an uncovering, but somebody else has also kind of covered over for her, so she's got the help. I suppose the response for this to be is, well, do I need to do anything here? It sounds like actually she is already got help. So maybe I just need to note that this person is in this situation and pray for her and just kind of let it go. I think that's probably how I would read that.
So this dream we were sent about being exposed, and it's a bit difficult, and it's anonymous. So I just wanted to read it out and tell you, and then maybe you can tell me what you think it's about. She dreams she's going to a business presentation. There are 3 people. They go to the company. They sit around a boardroom table. Then 3 people in this boardroom fall asleep, and the person presenting is ending the conversation, and none of them knew what he'd said in the presentation, obviously, because they'd fallen asleep. So they leave confused, and they go into the car park, but she's aware that her skirt is high, and you can see a bit of her bum, and she tries to act all cool by covering it up and walking away, but she feels uncomfortable about it.
I know this is a very interesting dream. So, I mean, I think the first thing I zone in on here is that the environment, it's a business presentation. So business is either spiritual business or it's business, and it can be both. If you work in the church, then it could, both of those things are kind of the same thing. So it's something to do with that. There were three of us. It could be to do with other people who are around you. And it's a table in the boardroom, which always talks about management, decision making, and the heart of an enterprise. That's where all the big decisions happen in any kind of business, spiritual business, church business, or other business. And then an interesting thing happens. The next moment, it was like they all fell asleep. And that sleeping is often in a dream means to not be conscious of something. So they've gone into this environment, but they're kind of not really aware of what's happening in this environment. And then it sort of ends, but nobody really knows what happens, which kind of reinforces there's something that's passed you by. Something has happened and it's passed you by. And then on your way out of this, you try and act cool by covering up this fact that something's been revealed. It's like it's a bit of bum and pant because the dress has kind of got hooked up. So again, there's something that is a bit embarrassing that you've realized has become uncovered, and you didn't want it to be seen. You don't want it to be seen. And the whole thing, kind of this whole process, the being unaware, has made you uncomfortable. Actually, Renee just said a good thing when she was talking about this. It's often to do with kids' private, it's private parts, is to do with privacy, and it's to do with something you don't want to be being exposed. And I think that's kind of really what's happening in this dream. It's a fear that you're going to go into this business meeting, which I think is a real context. It's either a church context or a business context. Something's going to pass you by. You're going to have a conversation. You're not really going to know what's going on, but it's going to leave you feeling like something that you didn't want exposed, that should be private, is been exposed, and you walk away feeling uncomfortable. I guess the thing to do there is to ask for wisdom and clarity on what it is, and then you'll be able to understand what to do about it. But also to know that God really, when you're not aware of stuff, and maybe it's something that's happening because of the environment you're in, God guards us and hedges us and covers us in those situations. So your fear of embarrassment may not be as bad as you think it is, if you see what I mean.